This one time at tennis camp, I was sitting with the kids during snack time, and somehow the conversation turned to coaches that the kids had played for and what they liked and didn't like about each coach. And some of the stories got pretty detailed. One 9-year-old boy talked about a coach who had told him he would get to pitch before the end of the Little League season, but didn't follow through on his promise. And several of the other kids shared stories about coaches that they felt had broken promises to them. And this conversation got me thinking, a lot of the things that the kids are keying in on don't seem like the same things that have been reported in sports psychology journals. So I looked a little deeper into the literature and found the reasons why. Many of the studies that had been published used questionnaires made up of questions that had been adapted from workplace assessments from the 1950s and 60s. So that is how I got the idea for my doctoral dissertation. These kids helped me find a gap in the literature, and I tried to fill it. So the next summer I brought a digital voice recorder and I interviewed about 70 kids, asking them to describe their favorite and their least favorite coaches. Some of the interviews took place on tennis courts, some took place on lawns adjacent to tennis courts, and a few took place in sandboxes. So from the outside, this obviously didn't look like super cutting-edge research, because one woman who was either a oldish mom or a youngish grandmother said, "This is such a neat school project. Is this for high school or college?" But all the moms seemed very interested in the study, and many asked if I would email them a summary of the results when I was finished. And here's what I found. Even the youngest children I interviewed, the 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, have very clear ideas about how they like to be coached. And the answers of the youngest participants were incredibly consistent. Basically, they said their favorite coach was nice or fun or funny. The only other response was, "She brought snacks." So you can use this knowledge as a little parlor trick. Next time you see a 4-year-old, put a piece of paper in your left pocket that says nice, a piece of paper in your right pocket that says fun, and a piece of paper in your back pocket that says funny. Then ask them, "Who is your favorite coach or your favorite teacher?" "Oh, so what do you like about them?" And then pull out the corresponding piece of paper to amaze the adults with your mind reading skills. For the youngest youth sport participants, the 3, 4, 5, and 6-year-olds, it really is that simple. They want a coach who is nice to them and fun to be around. And fun includes sometimes being funny in a way that 3, 4, 5, and 6-year-olds find funny, like really animated or exaggerated facial expressions. They aren't particularly demanding when it comes to other possible considerations, such as technical competence, because kindergartners pretty much think that anyone who is taller than them is pretty awesome unless that person is mean to them. But around age 7, children start to become a little more discriminating when evaluating coaches. What they want in a coach doesn't change per se. They still want coaches to be nice and fun and sometimes funny, but their descriptions of their favorite coaches become a little more elaborate, indicating that good coaches are encouraging, supportive, patient, calm, gentle, attentive, and they are adults who enjoy being around kids. But as children get older, the number of items on their wish list grows, and they want a coach who is credible, i.e., someone who understands the sport they are coaching, that possesses the ability to demonstrate the skills of the sport, and understands how far they can push children. So as elementary school aged kids approach adolescence, they develop the cognitive abilities necessary to differentiate between a nice person who isn't a very good coach and a nice person who happens to be a good coach. And according to elementary and middle school age kids, being a good coach means that the coach is able to play the roles that every coach needs to play. They need to act as a teacher by providing explanation, demonstration, and instruction, while also giving feedback and answering questions during the skill learning process. They need to act as a manager by managing time and keeping kids focused during practices and implementing strategy and putting players into the right positions during competition. They need to act as a trainer by caring for injuries and leading kids through conditioning exercises. And they need to act as sort of a performance enhancement specialist by creating a fun environment during practices, challenging children to do their best by providing an age-appropriate optimal push, and helping them develop the mental skills needed to regulate their emotions during competitions. Now, not surprisingly, when children described their least favorite coaches, their answers were opposite those of their favorite coaches. Kids said that the worst coaches are mean and dull and incompetent adults who aren't very good teachers, trainers, managers, or performance enhancement specialists. To children, a mean coach is one who is insensitive, impatient, confrontational, cruel, and apathetic about their job and the kids that they're coaching. To children, an incompetent coach is one who lacks the skill needed to demonstrate techniques during practice and lacks the knowledge needed to develop and implement strategies during competitions. According to the children I interviewed, bad coaches aren't very good at demonstrating sports skills. They aren't able to explain how to perform the techniques, and they talk way too much while kids are practicing new skills, providing the same instructions over and over and over again while kids are trying something new. And here is a big, huge, gigantic, enormous difference between good coaches and bad coaches. While good coaches are calm and kind to children while they're learning new skills, bad coaches are angry. They yell at kids while they're practicing new skills. They criticize kids and tell them to do it over in an angry voice, and they sometimes make them sit out after making a mistake as if they're sending a preschooler to timeout. And the kids' least favorite coaches were those who used exercise as punishment, like telling kids to do push-ups or run laps, or using physical punishment as retribution against kids who messed up. Now, I want to make something perfectly clear. To kids, there is a big difference between misbehaving during practice and making errors while performing a sports skill. Whereas some adults seem to get angry whenever kids don't do what they want them to do, regardless of whether it's because the child was goofing around while the coach was speaking or the child didn't follow through on a shot like the coach had taught them. Kids are perfectly okay with coaches who are a little bit strict when it comes to not goofing around at practices. In fact, kids want coaches to be a little bit firm so that practice isn't chaos. But there is a big difference between being firm and being mean or cruel. And kids really don't like it when coaches get angry at them for not being able to immediately perform new sports skills that they'd never tried before. They like demonstrations and explanations, and they like getting feedback while performing repetitions of a new skill under the attentive eye of a patient coach. Kids are really not fond of harsh coaching. And if this part of my doctoral dissertation revealed anything, it's this. Kids don't like being coached by angry adults. Which shouldn't come as too much of a surprise, because would you want a boss who is always angry? So just like the kids chatting during snack time at tennis camp, the kids in my study know what they like, and they know what they want. And their answers were consistent with what developmental psychologists would say children need from a coach. If you want to be a really great youth sport coach, but you can't remember the words I used to summarize this study, just crash a wedding and listen for the obligatory reading of 1 Corinthians 13, which provides a more poetic synopsis of the findings from my doctoral dissertation. You know, love is patient, love is kind, it doesn't boast, it isn't arrogant or rude, it doesn't insist on its own way, it's slow to anger, and so on. Just replace love is with great coaches are, and you'll have a pretty accurate summary of the responses of the children who told me about their favorite coaches.